So we're starting off the Level 4 Certificate in Education and Training with Unit 1. And we're going to be doing Understanding Roles, Responsibilities and Relationships in Education and Training. Now, on this unit, you have 3 learning outcomes. So 1 over here, 2 there, 3. So we're going to do 1 learning outcome per lesson so that it'll just be nice and broken up and we can get into quite a lot of detail for each section. So just to get you familiar with how it works, the first learning outcome is understand the teaching role and responsibilities in education and training. Second learning outcome is understand ways to maintain a safe and supportive learning environment. And third learning outcome is understand the relationships between teachers and other professionals in education and training. Now, a big tip I can give you for when you're actually doing your assignment, it'll be based, this is this format you're going to do it. So it'll just be, you're not doing it in any different scenarios. It's not getting chopped and changed. These are the actual questions you'll be answering. Yeah. Now, the learning outcome itself is not a question you answer, because I know when I first came across learning outcomes when I was studying, I was like, do I answer this and these? But no, just think of this as like a heading, and all of these points here answer that heading. So you only work those. And again, and these are called assessment criteria.
So basically, I have to write kind of one answer which having all these 4 included in there.
You'll have 4 separate answers. So you'll have 1 answer for 1.1.
Okay.
1 separate, and then it's good if you can actually pop the headings in front of it. But again, I'll explain that clearly. So you'll have one. So on 1 Word document, you'll start off, put down what unit you're doing, and then start off writing the learning outcome. Copy and paste it in. So this is the learning outcome. Then put 1.1. Right. Copy and paste this first question, then answer it. Then 1.2, then answer it. 1.3, 1.4.
Okay.
Just in that way.
Yeah.
And all of this goes in 1 document.
Okay.
Now, what I used to do was when I was studying, because I did the level 5 a few years ago, and the easiest way I found to get through it, because I was working full time and I was looking after my family as well, I used to do after each lesson, I would just go over the weekend or before my next lesson started, I would just make sure that I answered that section, the one that we learned that week, because they're all in the same order, they don't get changed about, so it just kept me on track. And then I just submitted it when I did the last lesson. But again, it's up to you, whatever works for you. If it works for you that you want to do it all in one go, that's okay as well.
Okay.
So let's go on here. Oh, I've not told you what the questions are yet, have I? So we're going to look at these 4 questions. So 1.1 is explain the teaching role and responsibilities in education and training. 1.2, summarize key aspects of legislation, regulatory requirements and codes of practice relating to your own role and responsibilities. 1.3, explain ways to promote equality and value diversity.
Okay.
And 1.4 is explain why it is important to identify and meet individual learner needs. Now, with all of these, you can actually use examples of what you do at work. They are the best way to answer them. So you can talk about legislations, and then always within them, when I'm marking them, I'm always looking for how it affects you at work. What is an example? How did you implement it at work? So wherever is possible, try and make an example of your work setting.
Okay.
So let's go on to the PowerPoint. Now, my laptop has been a bit silly these past couple of days. It's slowed down, so I'm hoping it'll let me bring the slideshow up.
Okay.
Oh, yes, it's been good now. Yep. So when we're looking at here, we're going to just look at teaching roles and responsibilities. So we need to understand why it's important for teachers, why is it important to know what their roles are, what their responsibilities are, what their professional boundaries are, and then what do you think is the roles and responsibilities of, say, a teacher?
Of course, towards the health and safety, where everyone is safe, making sure that the safeguarding policies are in place. Curriculum-wise teaching, like she need to understand the needs of the children and make sure that when she's planning and teaching, she need to consider the needs of each and every child.
Yes.
So she need to be flexible with her teaching. So planning, teaching, curriculum.
In a nutshell, it is all of those. Well done. Yeah, that's right. It is. You're planning, teaching, making sure you get the safeguarding and health and safety responsibilities, implementing and differentiating your work within all of these.
Yeah.
So we've got in here. So when I ask you what the following responsibilities are for a teacher in higher education or further education, or even in a primary school. So you've got things like bereavement, poor attendance, financial issues, consistently low test marks, and bullying. So what do you think out of these? There could be more than one. What is the responsibility would a teacher have?
Well, I would say all of them.
In other words, it does all affect it, doesn't it? Yeah. So because if there's a financial issue, you might find a child that's coming into school not dressed appropriately, they're not being able to, they might end up getting bullied, they might end up not having the right equipment. So yeah, it does. If someone has a bereavement, it is the teacher that's going to go and, probably console them. So yeah, mostly all of them.
Yes.
Let's get my editing to it. So when we have situations that are outside our control, we've got to see how we can actually manage them. What sort of boundaries we put into place, what sort of guidelines we're going to put in, so we need to, when we're going forward, we're going to look at the roles of lots of different teaching professionals and what their actual responsibilities are on here. So,
okay. Well, it depends on the situation, isn't it?
It does, exactly. So it really does depend on what situation you're on. And I remember a time we had a young boy who was in year 1, and he liked to cuddle. He liked to do a lot of hugging, but it got to the point where he was getting a little bit too physically close and nestling his head into an area that was private, and I wasn't comfortable with him, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So at a point, did it once, did it twice, did it 3 times, and at one time I had to say, no, you can't do this anymore. I don't mind giving you a side hug or giving you a high five, but I'm not comfortable with this because it's just in a child-friendly way. So in that part, you're still giving them the care and attention they want, but you put your own boundaries in place.
Yes.
But again, you're working in the primary sector, you're probably going to have a list of things that you know what the boundaries are.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at the following roles and the responsibilities, and we've got a section for each one. So we look at teachers, trainers, coach, tutor, mentor, instructor, assessor, and lecturer. Now you'll see that some of these actually interlink. You'll see that there's a lot of roles that are sort of mesh into each other. So responsibilities of a teacher on a basic level, they've got to keep up to date with their subject knowledge, identify learners' needs, plan and prepare all lessons and resources, mark assessments or homework, set homework up for them as well, and then obviously go towards the health and safety, equality and diversity, and safeguarding, all the things that you've already mentioned.
Okay.
A trainer is a little bit different. They'll know what the different learning styles are. So they'll be aware of what their learner learns best. So are they a visual learner, a kinesthetic learner? Do they learn by auditory, or are they a read-write learner? And there's more than the 4, but the 4 are the basic ones. They'll also have skills in like listening, negotiating, coaching, and they'll be able to set up small group interaction. Now, a trainer is good for somebody who might need a little bit of help in social interaction as well. So if you ever have a young pupil that needs a little bit of help, trainers are good for that. A trainer is normally more job specific or area specific. So with a trainer, you probably get this. I doubt you'd get in close contact with a trainer within a primary school. But if you were in like year 10, 11, or in a further education college, sixth form, or adult education, you might see a trainer a little bit more. So somebody like an engineer or a baker, people who have subject job knowledge, and they'll be just working in that particular area themselves.
Okay.
They'll have their knowledge, their subject matter, they'll be experts in that. They'll have andragogical knowledge and skills as well, good communication skills, and good personal traits. So in case, because when I faced a transition from TA to starting to go into my journey for teaching, there was a lot of terminology I wasn't aware of, so I've made it, I've tried to pick things out. So andragogical is just a fancy word for saying how you practice and how you teach, and that's it. So it's nothing scientific or anything. It's just a fancy word to show what your method of practice is.
Okay. Can I ask one thing?
Yeah.
You know, when you say trainer or when you say teacher, how would you differentiate both?
Well, with a teacher, I'd actually see a teacher more in a traditional educational establishment, so in a college or in a primary school, high school, sixth form. With a trainer, I might see them being somebody that's come up. And just example is if you go and hire a personal trainer, they're still there, they're still teaching you to go and do these things. So they're helping you get fit, but it's on a different level. You're actually doing a different type of service, which is a little bit non-traditional.
So is it like working in a school as a trainer?
I think you wouldn't really get trainers in the school unless you've got football coaches, but then you could go into the coaching side. But I think this would be on if you're doing like mini courses where you're doing something outside of traditional learning.
Okay.
Yeah. So then we've got coaches. Now, a coach you would actually see more in a school. You might have a PE coach that comes in or is hired within your school just to teach PE. And like with the PE coach that we had in when I was in a primary school, he actually took some of the lessons because he was a qualified teacher, but mainly his job was to do physical education. So the roles and responsibilities of these coaches are they're also instructors. They're very organized. They will act as an organizer for team sports. They'll carry out child protection. And again, child protection will really come under everything. They'll be a leader. They'll be educator because then again, they're going to be going on, teaching, taking over classes as well, especially if they're short-staffed. There'll be a trainer again because they might work one-to-one. I know my little boy loves playing football, and over the lockdown, the actual PE teacher did one-to-one FaceTime lessons with them, and they did PE together. They did a few football skills, which was fantastic. And he did it with a few of the kids that were really interested. There'll be a role model. You might see all the kids flocking around a coach. They seem to love them a lot more than all traditional, because they do all the fun things, don't they?
Yeah.
And they're a very good motivator. So these are the roles and responsibilities of a coach.
Okay.
There it is. But I stopped working then. And then you've got a tutor. So tutors will normally work one-to-one with the student. I know we've got the National Tutoring Programme that has joined up forces with a lot of schools now, where the kids will stay an hour extra after school, certain children that might need a little bit of a boost. And then they'll teach them online. So they'll be at the other end of a computer, and they'll be teaching them and giving them tasks. So a tutor will develop the students. They'll carry out assessments first just to see where that child is at or that person is at. And then they'll go ahead and set a plan in place to help them, to intervene and to give them a bit more of a session where they can work up towards their potential. They'll correct any mistakes, and then they'll implement any corrections. Know the specific needs of each student because they've carried out that assessment. Again, like I said, they do the assessments, they encourage the students, they set lesson goals, so they'll do mini goals rather than saying that this is a 6-month plan. We want this child to go from a 1 to a 1 plus, or between from the green band to the blue band. We'll give them mini goals like today your goal is to make sure you spell this word correctly. By the end of the week, I'd like you to be able to do this with little tasks. A tutor will also determine how long they're going to teach a particular subject to a child. Now, the difference between a teacher and a tutor here is a teacher's got a strict curriculum that they need to follow. They've got a mainstream class, and even though they differentiate and put aside and say, right, we've got a maths activity on division or halving and sharing. So you'll have, say, 3 groups in your class. One will be the strong ability, one will be some children that have a medium ability, they can get on with it, but they just need a bit of extra support. Then you'll have the lower end of the group, which might need one-to-one TA work with them consistently. Yeah. So in that case, the lesson is just gone from more difficult questions down to easier questions. And then they've only got, say, like they've got a week or 2 weeks to do that particular topic. Because when I was in school, we had a certain amount of time that we had to go ahead, and we were trying to teach a whole lot of curriculum into a limited time. But with a tutor, because they're one-to-one, if they see that, for example, they come up and they see me and they say, oh, I'm just struggling with multiplications, they can actually spend 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, a whole 2 months with me to get me fixed up on multiplications to make sure that I'm at the standard where I need to be, and then go forward, because they don't have a time limit. They're normally extra. They're normally an additional service that a parent or a school will hire. Okay. Yeah. And then because it's an additional service, I mean, my children, I used to put them into a tutoring facility called Kumon, and they went there for a very long time. Okay. Yeah, and with them, because it's something that you pay for privately normally, they'll keep in touch with the parents, and they'll let them know what the progress is like. So it's more personalized. Okay. And then we've got a mentor. So a mentor is a positive role model. Now with these, because this course is not just primary related, it's actually related to adult education as well. So a mentor will be someone that you probably end up seeing in a work. So if you're at work now, you might have, when you first started working there, you might have had a member of staff that you shadowed or that you can go to and speak to. So they might have been your mentor. You might even have them now, so that every once a term you'll go, or twice a year you'll go to them and you'll set targets for yourself. You know, when we do those appraisals. So that person is actually your mentor as well. Yeah. So you can go to him or her and you can just say, right, okay, you know, Elizabeth, for example, I'm having this issues, I don't know how to get, and then she'll help you. So that's what a mentor is in a work environment. Okay. So there'll be a positive role model for you. They'll guide the mentee. So if, for example, your mentor will guide you in developing your skills. They'll encourage and support you. They'll give you constructive feedback. So if they see something that you're not quite doing right, they're not going to say, oh, Geeta, that was horrible, you don't know how to work. They're going to come and say to you in a constructive way, you did a good job, you started off well, but I think you should focus on this, this, and this. Okay. They need to be trustworthy, because whatever you share with them, it shouldn't go backwards and forwards to anybody else. And they're good at communicating. And they should not make decisions for you. They should help you to be independent and help to build supportive relationships and motivate you and celebrate your successes. Yeah. Then you've got an instructor on here, and we're almost to the end of these roles. So an instructor has they're there to establish and maintain a civil, productive, and inclusive and stimulating learning environment. So instructors are there to give you, they just have like it's just like it's within an instructional setting. It's where it's quite civil. Do you know the best way to explain this is, whenever you went for your driving lessons, you'd have an instructor there, wouldn't you? Yeah. So that person would tell you, put your hands in 214, make sure you check your mirrors every 15 seconds. So they're just there. You're in a very formal setting. You're quite respectful with each other. You're in an instructional setting where they're just telling you what to do and you're following their rules. So that's the whole part of it. You're not there for big conversations or to, gain the best friendships with each other. You're just going 1 hour, getting your instructions on how to drive a car, or maybe you're getting instructed on how to bake a wedding cake or something, and that's it.
Okay.
And then an assessor. Now, assessors have different types of responsibilities. Now, an assessor is a person that I'm a teacher, but I'm also an assessor. So what I can do is whatever homework whatever essays, work, PowerPoints, anything you send in, I can look at it and I can mark it for you and I can give you feedback. So an assessor will organize and schedule their plans. They'll make sure that they've got a good timetable set in place so that they know exactly what needs to be done and when it needs to be done. They'll assess your work. So they'll mark your work, they'll give you a grade, and it's normally against a standardized selection of output, like a barometer, where you can mark it against. So I've got standards that have been set in place for any work that I mark. I know what the standards are, and I can mark it against those. And I've done them so often, I don't even need to look at those standards anymore because you get used to them. So they're able to give you a grade. They can tell you if it's a course that does a pass, merit, or distinction, they can say your work is a distinction or a pass, and so on. And they'll give you feedback. So when you start sending your work in, you'll see that I'll be giving you a feedback via a cover sheet, which will be attached to the top of your work. And I'll just put my comments into each section. I'll tell you what grade you got for each, if it's achieved, if it's not achieved. And, I think I showed you something like this when we did our induction, where I showed you that fill out a sheet, yeah. And then also there's a lot of my students will ask me to give them a quick phone call or will, send me messages of emails and things. So I'll do feedback in that way as well.
Okay.
And the last one, so a lecturer's role and responsibilities. So they coordinate lectures, seminars, and tutorials. They design and prepare and develop the courses and the study material. So everything that you've got on this course, we've put it together. We've got a set of standards that we do follow, but everything else, these PowerPoints, any resources that we give to you, they'll be designed by us and we'll give them to you. We'll get them created. We'll develop and apply any different teaching methods, anything new, just so that we try to keep in touch. And, with all these changes, especially now that we've got web teaching, internet teaching, which is distance learning, is become a lot more popular now.
Yeah.
A lecturer can rate your students' coursework, so in a way like an assessor as well. And then they'll set up and also mark exams. So that was all of the different roles and responsibilities. So when you answer this question, I just want you to do like an introduction of what the basic roles and responsibilities are, and then just go into each little role, so a lecturer, tutor, coach, and just put down what their roles are, what the responsibilities are. So about 4 or 5 sentences for each one, and then you're covered for this.
Okay.
So this might be a little bit small. Let me see if I can make it. I think if you go or zoom over your screen, you can actually make it a little bit bigger. But I'll go through it. Yeah. So we're going to look at summarizing key aspects of legislation, regulatory requirements, and codes of practice relating to your own role and responsibilities. Now, you will actually have a code of practice with your workplace, so get hold of that. And it has things like how you're meant to behave, how you implement equality and diversity, what your dress code is, and those type of things in there normally.
Okay.
So key parts of the legislation that are covered in schools, in any education setting, to be honest, is the Employability Act, Data Protection, Education and Skills Act, Mental Health Act, RIDDOR, so reporting of dangerous diseases and occurrences, which is to do with health and safety. SENDA, Special Educational Policies. Children's Act, Prevent Education. Have you heard of the Prevent Education?
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, fantastic. Because it's a new one, so not a lot of, but I think school staff are aware, yeah. Equality Act, the Health and Safety at Work Act, COSH, so Control of Substances Hazardous to Health. I'm surprised I remembered that. And then Human Rights Act. So these things are covered on some more than others, because you're working with young children, you might not really come into contact with the Mental Health Act as much, but obviously it's age specific.
Okay.
Change the screen, that's good. So we've got the Children's Act. So I've got a few of them which I've put into detail because I thought these were more specific to a traditional educational establishment. So this act you'll already know from when you've done your TA programs that we've got the Every Child Matters. So you know how with this, because you've got a good amount of knowledge here anyway. What does your school do to make sure that they cover Every Child Matters?
So, like, for example, like we have many children who are who need support with EAL. So they will have out of class. They have different sessions where they go and learn the same topic in in a different way from rest of the children. So they have extra knowledge, and when we are learning in classroom, so they have already built up that knowledge to be involved in the overall classroom learning.
Yeah.
The same with SEN children, like we have got different toilets, center is there, so it's different kind of learning for them. So there are special staff being hired, which are like kind of one-to-one if there is any special extra needs. So they are supporting them with their dietary needs. It's not free school, of course. But if the child is asthmatic or anything, we have got their medications in school whenever they need. We are able to give them.
Brilliant. And then we've got the free school meals for children from reception for year 2, don't we? And from I saw a post from the Department of Education 2 days ago, I think, and they're saying that they're going to start introducing free breakfasts as well for all children that need it. So it's nice that these things are coming into. I don't know exactly when it's going to be implemented, but I know that they're intending to do it.
But they already get milk and fruit.
Yeah, they do get milk and fruit, but then that's only up to a certain age for free, isn't it, within primary schools?
Well, fruit is free till I think year 2, year 2. But milk is, I think, free till reception, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
But then again, from next year 1, parents have to pay if they want.
Exactly. So then we've got the Safeguarding Vulnerable Groups Act, so the SVGA for short. And this was actually passed to help avoid harm or any type of risk of harm. So this is hoped to be achieved by preventing people who are not suitable to work in school. So you've got the basic things that when you have any member of staff coming in or any temp that comes in, you know that they have to have that enhanced DBS check.
Yes.
If it's not, then no. I mean, I don't think it's any issues if I know that there was once somebody I came into contact with saying, she had, when she was younger, she had shoplifting charges. So things like that are not an issue. It's just if it's any serious things that have come into force.
Okay. So
it's just there to try and prevent. Sometimes it doesn't completely eradicate the issue because you don't know if a person has been caught doing something, what their proper thoughts are. But it helps there. It's put into place so that you can safeguard these vulnerable students and these vulnerable adults.
Yeah.
Then you got the Data Protection Act, and you'll be familiar with this. When when I used to, I remember when I was pregnant with my youngest child, because we was in a boisterous year 1, year 2 class. Towards the end of my pregnancy, I went into the admin into the office to work there instead. And I remember doing an intake for the young ones that were starting nursery the following year. And because obviously when you're working in class and when you're working in an office situation is different, isn't it? So I was taking all the passports and I'm leaving things lying here and papers lying. I'm like, no, you can't do that. You photocopy it, you put the copy over here, and then you give that straight back. And that was a good learning curve for me because you don't really realize the issues. Then we've got the Equality Act. And now this is a very big thing. And it really does, you'll have your equality and diversity. I think in everything that you read, even your school ethos will probably have something relating to equality in it.
Yes.
This is just there. It just sets in place that it's unlawful to discriminate against people who have a protected characteristic or anyone that is associated with somebody who has a protected characteristic. So anything to do with age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage, civil partnership, race, religion, belief, sex, pregnancy, maternity, sexual orientation, and employment. And we're almost at the end. We've got a couple more slides. Then we've got the Health and Safety at Work Act. And again, it just puts into place, to be honest, it's common sense. That if you see a spill on the floor, get it cleaned up if you can, or put a chair over it if you're very busy, and just making sure people avoid it. If there's loose tiles, put it into maintenance, that there's loose tiles, they need fixing. So it just puts in regulations because there's a responsibility for employers and employees to make sure you're in a safe working environment.
Yeah.
And then copyright. Now, this is something that we don't normally think of when we're working. But have you ever gone into work and you've been given a workbook and you've been told, oh, give me 6 copies of this page and 10 copies of that page? So there's certain things that we can make photocopies of and there's certain things that we can't. So we've got to make sure that you've got the copyright enabled when you are doing those photocopies. Normally, they're already, permissions have already been made.
Yeah.
Then the Human Rights Act. And again, you'll be familiar with this again. It's just there in place to make sure that the human rights are protected by law, that everybody's got a safe environment to live in. They've got these associated services that they can have, so food, water, services. So you'll see within your workplace, you'll have a bathroom you can use, you've got a staff room, access to a kettle, put your lunch in a fridge, so you can actually go and relax and wind down.
Yeah.
So that was 1.2. Do you want to ask anything or add anything onto this section?
No, I'm fine with it.
Let's go on to 1.3. And now we're just going to explain ways to promote equality and value diversity. So within this, when we're trying to promote equality and diversity, there's a few things that we should consider. We should challenge negative attitudes, especially among students. Now, the group that you're in, they're going to be at an age where they listen to TV or they listen to parents, and they will come and more or less repeat the same words to you at school or to other children. They can be quite mean, they can call each other fat, they can call each other, they can say things about each other's colour or the way they dress or the way they smell, because they don't have that filter at that age. And some of them are quite mature, some of them are not. You get a very big divide in between them.
Yes.
So you sit them down and you address it and you go, and especially the issues that I found when I was within the younger age group was that when we had a child that had special educational needs, sometimes they would behave differently with that child because they didn't quite understand why maybe they're not doing the same things or joining in the same way, or maybe they got upset a bit more quicker, so they didn't. So sometimes you would see issues arising, negative attitudes arising towards a child that maybe has special education needs, just because they don't know that much.
Yeah.
So it's to avoid stereotypes as well. Set clear rules. Now, you probably have classroom rules, won't you? That, behind sit nicely, Get them to treat all students kindly, and also be a role model. treat your students politely and your staff. Now, I know there were a lot of members of staff that would very happily tell a child to shut up or just say, go and sit down and things. And I made it a rule that I was never going to speak like that. And because I don't, that's something I won't use with an adult or a child or anything. Because if you want to be treated with respect, you need to show your learners respect as well. So it really depends on how you model yourself also.
Yeah.
And then I remember there was one time I was in a year 5 group, and it was when I was a TA actually at that time. And one child told another child to shut up. And I'm like, that's not a nice thing to say. And they turned around and said to me, well, Miss So-and-so says this to us all the time. And I had no answer for them. I couldn't say anything and that really honed it into me. They will look at your own behaviour. They'll see what's going on and they'll pick up so quickly. And then again, create an all-inclusive environment. So even if somebody, say, broken their leg and they can't join in with particular activities like PE, maybe adapt it so that they can do something while, they're sitting down or maybe play in a smaller area.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do we incorporate this into a setting? Now, I remember going to high school and we had shalwar kameez that we could incorporate as a uniform as long as it was in the same colours. We were fine, we were allowed to wear it. There's a lot of places where you'll have like headscarves or turbans that I incorporated within the uniform. Mm-hmm. Different celebrations like Christmas, Eid, Hanukkah, Easter, all of them. And then simple things like translating a letter into different languages. If you've got a lot of parents that maybe speak Urdu or Punjabi or Hindi, then get a member of staff to translate. If you've got someone there, do it. It's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And even things like what you were mentioning where you're doing interventions. So you've got different areas, you've got intervention areas you can take the children to and help them progress and help them keep up or, keep to a level that that they're comfortable at. Even that is you incorporating it. And then again, things like if you know that there's an issue, not everybody has the same financial status, unfortunately. So if you see that there's a student that maybe doesn't have certain resources, even giving them a couple of pens and some paper just to make sure that they can do their homework, or handing out reading books like we do on a normal basis anyway, and activity packs. It's a way to implement it.
Yeah.
I mean, what we used to like to do at the end of the year is we'd give out prizes. And, for the end of the year summer party, we'd get a whole load of things like we'd get them to do pass the parcel or musical chairs, and whoever won would get a prize. But then at the end of it, we would actually choose, we'd have 2 main prizes, and we'd choose 2 particular children or 2 children to get those prizes. And it wasn't based on we used to say to them it was based on who's done the best or who's done really well and made the most effort. But we actually chose those children that we knew didn't actually have access to certain things, that may have been in a different type of environment, that may not get a colouring book or may not have as many luxuries as X, Y, and Z do. So we choose in that accordance just to make them feel more motivated about coming into school. So little things do make a big difference. That was 1.3. And 1.4, just the last one on here, is explain why it's important to identify and meet learners' needs. So have you come across the teaching and learning cycle before?
Not sure.
Yeah. So all it is teaching and learning cycle. You will actually be doing it at work anyway, because you said that you were working within the mainstream classroom, but you also do interventions, don't you?
Yes.
So when you're doing an intervention, you're sitting down with a child, say, who's got EAL, and you're speaking to them, and you're actually, when you're having a conversation with them, you're trying to identify their needs. You're figuring out what do they know, what spellings do they know, how much language skills do they have, and what do I need to work on. Then after you've done that, you'll probably have noted a few points, and then you'll probably end up either going to the class teacher and saying, right, child A, child B, child C, these are their needs, this is what we do, and this is what we need to plan. Or you'll just get on with it and plan it yourself and say, right, I need to do these sounds with this child, and I need to do this phonics set with this child. This one can go to that teacher, you know. Then you'll go and you'll deliver what you planned. So you'll go and you say, right, let's do this phonics program, read, write, ink with this one. Start off with stage 1 or 2 or 3. And then when you've done that, you'll carry on assessing their learning. You'll see, oh, is this going good? Are they keeping up? Do they need to go in a higher group, or can they stay with me? Or should I send them into a lower group so they get more help? And then you evaluate your own work. So after you've had that, so after each lesson, you probably do a bit of reflection, don't you? You think back and think, oh, that went well, but this didn't. So it's just the teaching and learning cycle. That's all it is in a basic way of what you do at work without even realizing it.
Yeah.
So these are just like, when you hear all these like fancy terminologies or titles for them, they just seem like, oh my goodness, I've never seen those before. But it's something that you do regularly on a normal work day. Now, when it's important to identify the needs of individual learners, because it'll help you to boost their morale and it'll help you to encourage them. So if you know exactly what they need and what areas they struggle at or what areas they exceed at, you'll get to motivate them. Like, you might have a particular child who likes Paw Patrol, and they might really love them a lot. So when you're doing a maths activity, rather than saying 1 orange and 2 oranges, what do they make? You might say 1 Paw Patrol and 2 Paw Patrols, what do they make? And then it differentiates it for them, doesn't it?
Yes.
Makes it more interesting. And then, it's like you even said yourself, when you're in a class environment, not every child will be able to keep up with what the teacher is saying. Some zone out, some get bored, some it just goes over their head completely. So when you're giving mass instructions, it can be confusing for some children and some learners. So it's nice to be able to have that individualized care. There you go. There you go. So when you do all of these, it helps you to achieve a good quality in the classroom. So you're able to manage behavior, emotions, any social challenges. So you probably see some kids sitting on the carpet just opening and closing their shoes. And that's a sure sign that they've got no idea what's going on and they've zoned out. Or fiddling or doing somebody else's hair. There's always telltale signs that you'll see.
Yeah.
It'll help you to develop the talents. So, you know, it's not always a negative when they're in the classroom. It's not always a negative environment to have what I'm trying to say is that when you're in a mass environment, sometimes it can be a negative effect on the children, but then again, it can be a positive effect as well. When they're all working with each other, they're getting goaded on with each other, and they're able to actually, you know, use each other's ideas and go from there. And it helps them to, you know, process exactly what's going on and understand what they're able to do. Especially when you get that copycat behavior with the younger ones, when you see, oh, for example, Mary can put beads on a string. I want to try and do it as well. So they really push themselves to try and do the same skills.
Yeah.
You'll be able to organize the classroom in a good way. So sometimes you'll know certain children cannot sit together because, or even certain adults cannot sit together because they'll just spend the time arguing or talking. So you might have a classroom where all the tables are bunched up, or you might want to do them in sets of 2s. So it just helps you to recognize how you need to do it. Some children do group work very well. Some children prefer to have smaller, less distractions. It helps you to create interest, so because you're meeting the individual needs, you're going off what their own interests are, and you're working in that aspect, so it helps you to do that. And then again, it just helps you to plan all the activities. So you know, you're familiar with them, you know what they need to do, and you're planning the activities to cater for everyone. And then in the end, just to overview it, it helps you to create individualized learning plans for ILPs. You'll probably see those folders in and around the classroom.
Yeah.
Helps you to plan and implement any intervention sessions. You can actually make recommendations. And remember, this is not just for when you're talking about a traditional teacher. You're talking about anybody that is contact with the children, so any educator. And again, it'll help you to plan and develop any resources to actually meet those learners' needs. So that was it for 1.4. We've looked at different teaching roles and responsibilities, legislations. We looked at how to promote equality and value diversity and why it's important to meet individual needs. Now, I spoke to you about this section here, so just mention the different roles, the positions, and then just put down what their responsibilities are. For here, put a copy of your codes of practice in. So when you're answering this, talk about the key aspects of legislation, just highlight what they are, and then put down a copy of your code of practice. Again, we'll discuss it towards the end as well, at the end of last session. And then just explain how those legislations are actually implemented in your workplace. You can put an example down. You can say we were carrying out an assessment or doing an intervention session, and this is how we did it. We covered the equality, safeguarding, health and safety, and our own codes of practice as well.
Okay.
Best way to answer 1.3, how to promote equality and value diversity, is use an example of a time you actually promoted equality and valued diversity. How did you do it? What was done? So a nice detailed example. And then again, the last one, 1.4, can be answered in the same way. So talk about why it's important to identify and meet individual learner needs in one paragraph, and then use a very detailed example of how you did that for one of your students. You gave me a good answer earlier about how you supported your EAL student. You can actually expand that and say, this is how I did it.
Okay.
So stop recording here.